We're going to be doing a firmware upgrade for the Canon C100. This is the first version. They already have a Mark II out, just to let you know. Now, when I did my firmware upgrade for the Canon XF100, it was very popular, so I figure I'd do one for the Canon C100. It's very similar to the way you do both cameras, and it's actually quite easy, so we're going to go into that right now. How you doing, guys? So we're going to go ahead and download the firmware for the Canon C100 just by going to their download site there, and just take a second for that to pop up. It's a little bit slow. Now, of course, here you can download some documentation and software that you need. Obviously, we're just going to choose firmware. That's going to show you the latest firmware, and then obviously the date. This is 06/16/16. Now, they do have it for both Mac and Windows, so you just choose your operating system of that you going to install the firmware onto your flash card. I use Mac OS X, so now you can you have two versions really. You have one with the dual pixel CMOS autofocus feature right here. This is the one that was applied at the factory, so make sure you know which one you have. Obviously, if you're a professional, you probably already know. Now, you probably don't want to mix these two up and apply the regular version over the autofocus dual pixel CMOS version, or vice versa. It may mess it up. Now, hopefully they put in the firmware if it recognizes if it's the wrong one and may stop you. I don't know, maybe it doesn't. So if you do apply the wrong firmware, I don't know if you can go around and apply the right version. I'm not sure. Worst case scenario, you may end up taking it to the Canon factory to get it installed by them. So make sure you have the right version. So we're going to go ahead and choose the Mac version, and I do have the dual pixel CMOS autofocus feature, and we're going to click on that. And you can also open it up, software details, driver and software details. It shows you the bug fixes and or new features you get with this firmware. So we're simply going to accept the disclaimer and then download the firmware, just like so. Okay, we're going to go ahead and open up the DMG file, and it's going to take a second. Now, from what you see here, you do have some documentation, some PDF files. Now, this right here is obviously the new firmware, which you're going to put on the flash drive, which we're going to cover here in just a minute. First thing we're going to do is to format a SD card using the Canon C100 for two reasons. For one thing, you don't want to just buy one brand new and just insert it. You want it to format it with the C100 file system. And number two, if you're using an older card, you want to reinitialize that file format, because having worked with DSLRs before, sometimes it gets corrupt, and you don't want that file system to get corrupt when you're trying to install the firmware. That could be a bad thing. Okay, we just freshly formatted the flash drive in the Canon C100. Now, for some reason it wouldn't allow me to drag the firmware to the Canon SD card. It kept on giving me, I don't know if it was permissions problem. So what I tried was actually recording a file onto it, and then see if that would work, and then simply delete the video file. And we're going to try to copy it over now to the Canon flash drive. Now it seems to be working. So when you freshly format it, you probably want to actually run or shoot some a quick 5-second video and then simply delete it. And so there we go. We have the file right on the Canon flash drive. We're going to install that in the Canon C100 and go from there. Once you copy the firmware to the SD card, simply put in the C100. As you can see now, the firmware is actually highlighted rather than grayed out, showing there's actually a new file. Here it's showing 2041. And then when you select it, it will ask you if you want to upgrade to the new, in this case, 2071. Simply hit OK, and then it will take 5 minutes or so. You'll actually see the SD card light flash until the firmware is upgraded. Once the firmware is upgraded, it'll restart the camera, and as you can see here, we got the new 2071 installed and ready to go.